Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. We are once again live in the Netherlands, coming from Autodesk's DevCon conference, where we are talking about all things construction technology and a whole lot more. Today, I am joined by Victoria Jones, a principal digital developer at Laing O'Rourke. And today we're going to be talking about technology adoption, megaprojects, artificial intelligence, her career path, which has been quite interesting, and a whole lot more. So, Victoria, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, pretty good. It's been a really good 2 days. It's been absolutely fascinating, DevCon. It's been brilliant. It's really exciting to see where all the technology is headed right now. So, yeah, it's been great. And obviously, a great couple of days in this fantastic city as well.
Oh, Amsterdam. I'm loving it. And I'm going to hang out for a couple extra days and see some of the sites because it's tough when I'm doing interviews all day. I'm feeling good today. I'm glad you're here to join me. I slept past 2:30 a.m. last night, which makes me feel a heck of a lot better. Very excited about that. But let's jump straight into the fun here. You've had a really interesting career path, as I mentioned a minute ago. You've had hands-on mechanical work, you're deep in engineering, and now you've got a deep dive into all things digital. What's been the common thread that's driven your career with all of the choices you've made along the way? Because it's an interesting path.
For me, it's always been really, really important to get to the problem. So to actually be as close to the problem as possible and really see it for what it is. And I think as well, coming from that background, that practical hands-on, I've very much got that lens of, looking at how things actually work. So, sort of that structure, problem solving and consistency, I think have been the sort of threads that have always existed there. But yeah, you're quite right, that hands-on element, as it does give you a different viewpoint. It really does, that it's that very practical, you're not blinded by tech or anything like that. It's just what is that problem? Get as close to it as much as you can. I think that's one of the most important threads for me.
And I think we're at an interesting point in the construction industry in general right now, because a lot of the processes and workflows that the industry has followed have been the same for a very long time, whether it's hundreds of years or thousands in some instances. And we're kind of at a unique moment now where new tools are allowing us to reconsider kind of the order of our workflows or the way we actually get work done. And I think it's exciting because there's a chance for us to really make a meaningful impact on how productive our teams are, but also navigate some of the challenges we have with, labor shortages and productivity conversations and all the stuff that I think everybody is sometimes probably tired of talking about. But I think we have a chance to kind of tackle these challenges in a unique way now, which is pretty exciting.
I think coming to that point as well, I think there was a point raised at this conference, to be fair, where we talk about how long the construction industry has obviously been, about how difficult it is to implement change over the period of time. But if you look at things like Formula One, for example, in the 1950s, I think it was taking them 67 seconds to change the tyres on their car. And now it's down to 2.
Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think you've got to look at it through that lens as well, that, yes, it's slow, but it's a huge machine to turn. So, yeah, but you're quite right. The tech that's coming out now is insanely exciting and has huge potential.
And it's not problems that we just get to solve instantaneous. But I love that example because if you watch those old videos of old racing and such, like you've got people just kind of trotting up to the car and they pull the wheel off. It's a very different approach, but the expectations were also very different now. It's crazy to watch a pit crew operate and just whoop, they come in, the tools have changed, the technology to approach that problem has also changed. And it's enabled an entirely different set of expectations. That's a pretty cool lens to apply to construction. I really like that example. Just your thoughts here. If a technology leader, especially somebody who doesn't come up through the tools, as you have had the privilege of doing, spent a week out shadowing crews on a busy project, is there anything you think they would notice immediately that changes how they either design or choose and deploy technology?
Yeah, I mean, they'll see that, when if there's something clunky, if something doesn't work, the site teams are under so much pressure, they don't have the time to make that work. And that's when they'll start implementing workarounds. And one of the things that I don't necessarily like being heard said is when people talk about capability of these teams. I think what the leadership would see is incredibly capable people trying to adapt to systems that don't work for them in reality.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes those systems are designed a bit too far away from the ground, which is where they're needed. And some of the things I've seen, some of the most capable people develop the most insane, innovative workarounds to bypass these constraints that have been implemented by sort of enterprise level. So I think that's definitely one of the things that they would witness, and also that appreciation that they are actually quite remarkable. It's not an attitude problem. It's not a resistance to technology. It's just they will make it work for them.
Yeah, there's a very unique set of problems that we face out in the field. I appreciate your point there as far as like these folks know how to get it done.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what tools are you offering them and does it actually meet their needs?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's such an important conversation to have because you might introduce a tool that increases the amount of time that it takes to do something. That there might be a reason for that choice and that tool to be introduced, but you also have a conversation with those folks to help them understand and acknowledge, okay, yes, this might be a little more complex, but what we get if you do it this way gives you this new set of insights or
Yeah.
new information. And if you make it a conversation and help them understand what's in it for them, it's a very different point from just rolling in and going, you're going to do it this way.
Yep.
And who wouldn't push back on that if they don't understand why you've, from their seat,
Yep.
made their job more challenging to do than it was previously?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's that coordination. And I think you'll never get the sort of like perfect alignment between the sort of enterprise central systems that they're trying to introduce that do have huge amounts of benefit. You know, there's no denying they've been designed very thoroughly. But that connection with on the ground, I mean, that I think I've mentioned to you before about that example where a system was introduced that was incredibly clunky but added huge amounts of benefit for the sort of central business. So what the teams did is, this is again why they're so capable, is they got the digital teams involved, they called down the API of the software and they asked us to figure out how they can do a batch upload of the information instead of doing it line by line. So you can imagine that, you know, having to do that line by line for, you know, huge swathes of information, it's not very conducive. So they figured out a workaround to the constraint. It worked that well that all the different areas ended up implementing it. So
I like it. And when you remove that manual labor, now you're also reducing opportunities for errors and risks as well.
Exactly that,
Because
yeah.
every time you manually have to move data from one system to another, it's another opportunity for somebody to mix up a 1 and a 7 or whatever that data transcription is. And
Yep.
so, and gosh, I've had to do that manual data entry early in my career for different, you know, aspects of my work. And it's absolutely agonizing. Like that's not enjoyable work, even if it's important to do. So I'm curious to hear more about where that breakdown sometimes happens. So I think even on well-run projects, there's that moment where the plan hits the real world, as we've been kind of talking about here, and everything might get a bit messy. Where do you see coordination breakdown most often out in the field?
I think often you get a lot of breakdown at interfaces, and I think as well when you've got especially on big like mega projects, when you've got, you know, huge swathes of contractors, that interface between them all often causes a lot of problems. And obviously that lack of alignment as well, when you've got so many people there, the lack of alignment on data structures and deliverables, yeah, that's where I tend to see things go awry. But in particular, I think when people own certain parts of the truth of that project, sometimes there's the lack of coordination on that part. And I think there's a tendency as well to, you know, when people work in, I hate to use the word silos, I think it's been overused hugely, but there's a tendency when people own a certain element of that project is they tend to want to keep that very much to themselves and develop their own little systems because that's what works for their team. But it doesn't integrate with the wider system, and that tends to cause quite a few problems.
It makes sense. I mean, it's a complex challenge where even if you're not even looking at a mega project, a typical construction project has potentially dozens of different companies all engaged on this build in a timeline that's sometimes outrageous with overlapping scopes of work. And how on earth could you expect them to magically have this interoperable ability to navigate and manage data? And I think that's partly why it's such an exciting moment right now where I think folks are having more intentional platform conversations.
Yes.
What's our tool of record? Does that tool integrate deeply with all of our other expected tech stack? Because that's another important equation to the problem. And when you figure out that workflow and data starts to move seamlessly between tools and companies and folks, you have a much more equitable conversation because they have access to the information they need to make the choices they need to make instead of being stuck in that icky silo, as you mentioned a moment ago. And I agree. I think it's an overused word because people aren't necessarily intentionally trying to wall off their information. They're just trying to get their work done.
That's it. I mean, like I come back to the point before, they're incredibly capable people. They're not, you know, going out with the intent of, you know, scuppering the project or making life difficult. For what they're doing, they are convinced that they are doing the right thing and the right processes for their team. So yeah, you can't knock them for that.
Yeah, and you mentioned a minute ago that teams sometimes build that workaround if a tool is slowing them down, which makes a lot of sense the way you've unpacked it. What is that usually telling you when you come across that workaround, when you come out into the field? And how do you decide if you're going to fix the process, fix the tool, or just formalize that workaround and move on? Like, what does that conversation look like when those examples come up in the field?
Yeah, I think that, well, workaround, obviously, it signifies that the system isn't working. So whatever you've implemented is not working for the real world. And I think it's spotting whether that workaround is a one-off for that particular team, or whether there's a pattern there that it's happening consistently throughout, throughout the project and with different teams. So sometimes that constraint, if it can't be removed, then, like I said, we have to standardise the workaround. But again, I think it's spotting the patterns. I think that's the key thing on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the workaround is happening for a reason, whether
exactly,
the executive team is excited about it or not.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth having a conversation. It's like, help us
Always,
understand, like, what was happening that caused you guys to go break this?
Yeah.
And I think there's room to have that discussion where it's not punitive. You're not coming in and going, we're upset that you've done this.
Yeah.
It's help us understand because there's a reason.
And I think that's an important point, because I think sometimes that's this sort of how people interpret different roles within the project, especially with digital, is that sometimes they can get a bit defensive. They don't want digital coming in. They don't want people to do this, that, and the other. And I think there has to be very much a hand-holding aspect to that to support them and help them through it. And I think, especially when it comes to the technology, like you can put them on a day's training session, you can stick them with a generic model, and they're trying to use the software to sort of navigate the way around that. But sometimes it's better to just sit with them. But then we don't always have the resource to do that. Do you know what I mean? We haven't got, digital engineers for every person on that project. But I did see a really, really good example where a chap wasn't using the sort of reviewing software that we got available because it just absolutely daunted him. It was really intimidating for him. And he was, without a shadow of a doubt, a fantastic engineer. He was a really, really top chap. I remember getting on with him absolutely brilliantly. So I can remember going down and actually spending time with him and sitting, every time he threw a temper tantrum, every time he sent me a message on Teams saying, I can't get my head around this, I have absolutely had enough of this, I would purposefully go down to that part of the site and sit with him and say, show me what you're trying to do, and guide him through it. And also sometimes simplifying the tools makes life a lot easier for them. I know that some of the other engineers were struggling with the reviewing software as well. So what we did is we used Power BI and an IFC view and just set up a really basic system, just like a handful of filters, the really basic things that's all they needed. And they were away on that, absolutely away. So we went from them not engaging with the model at all to being all over it and chasing us down every time when one they thought was out of date or we'd not downloaded the correct one from a site. So
I think you're really highlighting how important the communication aspect of this tech deployment is, because you're spending time with them, you're really helping them understand this is why we want to do it this way, but also helping them understand, like, you're here to support them. It's not a gotcha moment as well. And I think that's another talk track that I hear sometimes on whatever tech you're deploying out into the field. Folks will see this and feel, okay, I'm being monitored now, or I'm being watched, and this is a gotcha moment. And you have to make sure folks don't feel that the tools that are being deployed now, it's not a gotcha moment. There's a bigger reason for this data capture. There's a bigger reason for why we're approaching this. And I think a lot of the advanced tech that's starting to come out really necessitates this baseline aspect of tech deployment that we're talking about here. But you got to help them understand, like, we're not here, this isn't punitive. We just want to make sure we're getting the work done, we're getting the information we need to make good decisions and figure out where the project is at. And then you kind of build on it from there. It's not just kind of a flippant choice you've made to roll out the tech on the field. Yeah,
exactly that. It's one of the things that I used to sort of drill into the digital engineers in particular, is that the fact that even with the amazing tech, it's still more of an admin role. Our job is to support the guys and girls on the ground that are building the thing. They're the money makers. They're the ones that need that support. So yeah, just to be conscious of, they're the ones that deserve, like, our support and help. It's not like, we're not an industry by ourselves. We're there to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Megaprojects a minute ago, and I want to come back to this. I know you've worked on, I think it's Hinkley Point C. Can you tell me a bit about that job? Like, it's a mega project, of course. So tell me about the scale, the pace, the complexity, and what makes it possibly different from normal large projects.
So Hinkley Point C, without a shadow of a doubt, probably one of the best projects I've ever worked on. It is absolutely remarkable. The sheer scale, it's not something you could really understand unless you've actually been on the site and seen it yourself. I mean, I think it's the rate, I think it's like 84 football pitches, I think is what they describe it as in terms of the size. So the footprint sounds pretty large. But when you've got 70 buildings, 60 or 70 buildings on there, you've got, I think we're up to about 12,000 people on that site now, with all the logistics and the manufacturing areas that we've got. It's quite tight, but it is absolutely enormous. I mean, so much so you can't walk around the site. You have to catch a bus to get from, one part to the other. It really is insane. But yeah, it's absolutely a fantastic project. I think in terms of the pace, I mean, I think you'd think with it being such a big machine that it would really sort of grind to a halt, that it'd be really, really slow. In some aspects it will, because obviously the level of governance and security that's involved, there are areas that do need to run at a slower pace to make sure that we get that completeness. But there are other areas where things were able to move quite quickly. So in terms of like the digital engineering and the development, so that allowed us, even though it made for like disjointed information, it allowed for us to create like these absolutely bonkers tools that drew all this information together and structured, unstructured data, which had, that had never happened before on a construction project. So yeah, it allowed some really sort of remarkable things to occur. We had a system where we automatically downloaded rebar from the CDE, which is quite common now. But we downloaded that and we enriched it automatically with the pour information, which fed all the dashboards. So we had live information about the quantities for rebar and the concrete as well. So that was quite remarkable. So
It's a nuclear reactor, right?
Yes, yeah. It's a nuclear. Oh, so yeah, going back to that, it was the first nuclear power plant to have been built in the UK in a generation.
Wow.
So the first, obviously, the last the nuclear power plant that was built. Obviously, the standards that would have existed then, there wouldn't have been any kind of BIM framework. Everything would. I don't even know anything would have been massively computerized then. So there was no standard that we had to sort of to work to for that. But with what was achieved there was just absolutely remarkable things. I mean, I've been in construction 20 years and I've seen things at Hinckley that just blew my mind. And in fact, it was one of the reasons that it really appealed to me to go there. So I actually transferred from East West Rail, a rail project in the south. And I'd just started my data science degree. And I'd heard all these whisperings, so, coming from Hinckley about these mega things that they were doing with data and information. And it was just incredible. So I actually asked for a transfer to Hinckley, and without a shadow of a doubt, probably the best decision I ever made.
It sounds inherently complex, but in a very interesting way. And of course, any project of that scale, especially, you're talking about power generation and everything, like there's regulations, there's complexities that you're not going to see if you're building an office building by any means. But it's interesting how all of that comes together. And I'd be curious also, just more generally, on a mega project, obviously, you're not rolling change out to 30 people. You're trying to influence potentially thousands who are all coming together to build this massive structure. What actually makes that tech adoption stick at such a large scale, especially for the busy folks or the skeptics? And then I think just that interesting nuance of doing new things that had never been done before. Like, how did they roll that out and get people to rally behind it?
I think, to be fair, I think it's simple, isn't it? That for adoption, it has to work for people. It's got to not make their lives more difficult, and they've got to see the value in it. So, I mean, that was always the thing. If you introduce layers of complexity, they're just not going to engage. They just don't. And, if it's not, we've got 70 buildings on that project. And so you've got different teams for each building. You've got your PM, you've got all your planners, you've got all your delivery engineers, you've got your digital engineer for that building. So they're all their own different teams. Do you know what I mean? So trying to get all those aligned, like I said, it has to add value. It has to be simple. I think because we were able to do a lot of bespoke systems that catered for what they actually wanted, as opposed to sort of being brought down and imposed on them, we managed to create quite a few things for them that were really, really effective, that were picked up by all the teams. So, for example, I think one of the things we did manage to do was go paper-free on the rebar. So everybody was wandering around with their tablets, checking rebar and updating the statuses, and I've never seen that done before.
Yeah.
But that was buying because, we made the system easy for them to use. We used a piece of software that they could easily access. It was just a straightforward tool. They could see the value straight away. The teams in the office were seeing all the updates on the rebar, all the live information. So yeah, that was really good for them.
And that's definitely a meaningful example, and I think a very straightforward one for folks who are just kind of starting their digital journey. I mean, that's a big reason why I'm sitting in front of you, to be honest, because PlanGrid, which was later acquired by Autodesk, had such a simple interface for digitizing plans and making folks, able to carry an iPad around that captured all of this information instead of a giant wagon full of blueprints for a project that's, of scale like Hinkley Point. So I appreciate that baseline. And I'd be curious too, on a 10-year plus project like Hinkley Point C, the tools change, people see a change, the processes might change. How do you keep a delivery approach consistent with things not becoming chaotic over such a extended timeline? Like most construction projects are not, 10 plus years. It's a very unique circumstance.
I mean, I won't pretend that everything did stay consistent, because it certainly
I
didn't.
appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, no, there were definitely. It's the same with any project, and I think especially with something like Hinckley, I think sometimes the consistency comes from the fact that mistakes can be huge. Do you know what I mean? So, when you're dealing with 500,000 embedded items, a mistake like that, when it's repeated as well over a building, becomes very, very costly. So there is an element where people need to have that consistency just to protect the project. But I think as well, alignment, definitely within the teams, and also documentation, because I know us in digital, we're terrible for it, like writing processes down and actually making it formal. And I think some of the technologies that have come through now, like we use things like SharePoint now, don't we, to sort of store information and update the team. So being able to document how we actually go to work and get that out to the teams and be really consistent on that, that's something that was really, really important. And it sounds really simple, doesn't it? But the amount of times that I've come across things where that's not happened, and then, and the lack of communication, I think a lot of it does come back to that point where if we don't keep talking and communicating, and it's just dropping those barriers a little as well, isn't it? Don't be protective, don't keep your cards close to your chest, let go of your ego, and work together.
And I think we've all been beholden to, we have a digitized project, but everything is just in random folders on that SharePoint server without any standards or any organization. Maybe you're new to the project, maybe you're not. You're trying to find something that happened 5 years ago, and you dive into that nested folder of chaos, and it's like document _final really final. And you're looking at all this stuff and you go, which one of these documents was actually how it's built? And I think it's exciting now because the tools are becoming more specialized in how the data is captured and managed, and finding that information is a lot easier. And also turning that information over to the owner is also better for them, because they can more effectively operate their project instead of receiving a giant pile of, binders full of documentation and CD-ROMs and everything else. Like the conversation is a whole lot different. And I kind of want to click into the data conversation a little bit more as well. I know you've got a data science background, and so it's something you're passionate about. So when you're trying to turn messy construction data, like we're talking about here, into something that is decision ready, what are the first 2 or 3 problems you try to tackle before you let anybody build dashboards or start layering artificial intelligence on top of it? What does that conversation look like?
Well, it's the foundations, isn't it? Before you can use anything extravagant, before you can even get to your dashboards or even your AI, if the foundations aren't there, the system loses trust. Do you know what I mean? So, you can build up if the data's coming in unstructured or not very structured, or we don't have a defined process to make sure it stays like standardized naming conventions. I know I hate to say the word spreadsheet, but the spreadsheets are coming through in that consistent format. As soon as things start to trip up, people lose faith, and then they stop. That's where the adoption comes in. They're not interested. Doesn't work. So I think it's really important to get those foundations in first, and also to make people aware of the limitations of the data. So if there will be instances where the data doesn't come through in a great state, you've just got to make sure that people are aware that this is what we can do with what we've got. But I think, ironing out the foundations, getting a consistent structure, getting buy-in from everybody, support, up and down, do you know what I mean? So team, get the leadership involved, but also get the guys on the ground involved to sort of demonstrate what this will add to them, what value this will add to them.
I think we've all heard of examples of somebody who made a decision based on a dashboard that had inaccurate project data. And I can't think of a quicker way to get a superintendent or a project manager to dismiss whatever solution you've pulled together and never engage with it again, because they've been burned now. They go, okay, I told the owner this, and this is not correct because the data behind it was inaccurate. And it's a real hard sell to get somebody to come back into the fold now and go, okay, we fixed this now. And they go, well, definitely. I don't believe that. And they'd rather, shoot from the hip with their gut feel. But I think the interesting balance as well is these folks have so much valuable experience, 10, 20, 30, 40 years out on the field. They know how to build. They have a lot of intuition about what's happening and make decisions based on that. And I think making sure folks understand, we're not trying to eliminate that intuition. We're not trying to dismiss your knowledge of the industry. The technology we're offering them should give them more certainty in those decisions, give them data to qualify it to others who don't have that experience or don't have that intuition. So it's a complement and not a replacement. Exactly. And I think folks can get kind of tripped up in that conversation sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it always comes down to communication. Yeah, there's huge amounts of experience on those sides, and people need to respect that as well. But yeah, as soon as that trust is gone, yeah, it's game over, and it's really hard to get that buy-in. But again, going back to the foundations, it's like this is why it's quite exciting being here. There was talking about AI, and I know AI is becoming a bit of a buzzword in itself, like a bit of a hype word, as it were. But there's potential there. Like with the data that comes in, I know a significant amount of the data that we have coming through is like from model data, for example, and being able to validate that data based on our requirements using something like AI, that has huge potential, and to be able to do it as quickly as well that AI can do it. That's going to the foundations of getting that data in correctly.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that a little bit more. What are you seeing specifically in the world of AI and construction that has you most excited, or do you anticipate will have a considerable impact on the way we get work done soon?
I know people talk about the supercharging element, but I do think that's hugely important. But I think so that's like in terms of learning and just efficiencies, day-to-day efficiencies. It's helped me significantly. But I also think in terms of like construction program, the way that AI now, if we are going to adopt the sort of industrialized construction methods, going forward in the industry, that opens up the potential that where we have everything tracked, we have the resources tracked in terms of people and the components, and we know where everything is, the ability to automatically adjust a construction program when things go awry on site. And it doesn't matter how much you pretend that it's industrialized construction, everything will go together perfect. It never, ever does in construction. There will always be that pinch point when we start to build things will go awry. So the potential for AI to be able to automatically adjust that program based on the resources that are available and move people to a different part of the building where it knows those resources are available, those teams are available, get cracking there while we fix what's gone wrong here. And I think that's hugely exciting.
There's a lot of trust that's going to have to go into implementing that level of automation and adjustment that the AI tech is going to implement. And I agree, like that's an exciting moment where we have this theoretical overlay on the project that's able to monitor it and help make decisions. It'll be interesting to see, especially for the folks that are a bit more skeptical, to get them to the point where they can accept that reality as well, where they go, okay, well, this is what's been adjusted and why, and just act and rely on it. And I think some teams are closer to that reality and more digitized, and I think other ones might be a little bit behind the curve there. But regardless of where we're at right now, I think the companies that don't really closely look at modern technology and tools are quickly going to be left behind in the world of competitiveness, because the ones that do really push the needle forward are going to be in a great position. And I think it's interesting in the AEC industry, like a lot of folks don't like being first in the race. They don't want to be the first one to really pull in the AI or make a big digital change or whatever. They kind of want to see, okay, have the big companies of the world successfully deployed this? And they go, okay, it's proved out now. But I think the folks that are going to be 5th or 10th to the finish line are going to be struggling a bit as everything kind of moves forward.
Yeah, definitely.
On the other hand, does anything feel like hype right now in the world of AI, where you hear it come up and you look at it and you just kind of roll your eyes? I've been kind of curious the other side of the conversation as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think people they generalize it so much. It's when they talk about, people say machine learning and AI, not realizing it all comes under the same umbrella. And I think, the potential to, wipe out designers, for example, or, I don't think those opportunities are there yet. I think there's always going to be that human element that's going to be required. I think it has a tendency as well. I think there's a lot of generalization. AI is going to revolutionize how we take off materials. You're going to be able to go into your models and just automatically generate quantities. But I think even without that structure and without that context, I think AI it's not as not intelligent, but it does need context. It does need support. It does need information. It does need structure. It's not something you can just run off with and tell it to do this, that, and the other, and it's going to churn out that information. There's a lot of you actually have to converse with the technology, don't you? You actually have to have those conversations to get it to understand what it is you actually need.
Yeah, and I think folks, not everybody realizes that, like the technology is not a sentient being. You're not empowering it to just go and make decisions and choices in the way that a human would. There's a lot of context and pattern recognition, and it's dependent on the data and the input that you give it as far as what you get out of it too. And there's so many different layers of this too. And I appreciate your point about, like, machine learning is a big aspect of this. If you look at just behind the scenes ML compared to interacting with an AI agent that's built on a large language model, the outputs are going to be dramatically different from what what you're seeing there. And I think the agentic moment is pretty exciting from my
Yeah.
viewpoint as well. And a lot of the announcements from Autodesk recently tied to Model Context Protocol and the depth of interconnection between tools and technologies. I think there's a lot that's going to happen there that we're just starting to see the surface of, and that interconnection is really going to move the needle in a way that I think people have speculated about, but wasn't necessarily reality. And I think that's changing now, regardless of what tools and tech you're using.
I think the integration as well with all the different platforms now is, that's adding real value. I think we've recently adopted the Copilot all singing, all dancing licenses, and it's just been an absolute game changer in the way we go to work. It really has sort of changed things. And it actually, I mean, I've always thought, I'm a pretty sort of techie person, as it were, and I've had ChatGPT for years, but that integration with all the different platforms, that's been a real game changer. Definitely.
Yeah. Now it's not just acting alone. It's built into your workflows in a way that I think just changes the conversation. I'm quite optimistic about where that's going to go. And I think it democratizes how we access information as well, because somebody might not necessarily know how to use all the complex tools, but they can engage with an agentic interface in a way that you couldn't do if you just open up a big software program. So it's going to be kind of fun to see, where this heads and what it unlocks. And I think we're just starting to see the surface of that. I'm curious too, in say 3 to 5 years, what do you expect the best or the most forward-facing construction teams will be doing routinely that most of the industry might consider unrealistic today, if you had to get out your crystal ball?
I think validation, I think checking, automated checking, I think people still think that's a long way off. And I think some people still sniff at it a little bit, but I think that's got real potential. I mean, we're already setting up tools, in-house and things to do model validation and do those kind of checks. So if we're doing that and we're writing that with, scripting tools, the potential for AI to come in and understand where the gaps are in the information and to be able to report on that, I think that's something that's going to really stand out. And I think quantification, I think that's going to be huge. We're still not quite there yet with the structure, but I think the potential for AI to fix models and fix the data, see the patterns and, when something has not been modeled correctly or the data is incorrect, is to be able to fix that and adapt it and make it a constructible model for us to be able to draw quantities down from and be able to work from that.
Yeah, and I think the scale is also quite exciting, because we're able to analyze data and make choices at an absolute breadth that a human simply can't do, which is I think very exciting. And I think some of the interesting machine learning examples that I've seen, like tied to safety, where like the tool can analyze 1 million photos and identify scaffolding risks or hazards at a scale where, of course, your safety team or your superintendent can go walk that site and go look, but they can't analyze that sheer volume of data. And so I think it just empowers folks to be safer and better and build with more certainty. So
I think the trust, I think that's going to come into that, I think, over the next 3 to 5 years, because it's still not trusted yet because of the fact that it hallucinates or does weird and wonderful things if you don't give it correct context. So I think, over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be huge developments in terms of getting to trust the information that comes out, especially when you're working at scale, like you said there, when you're having to trust it to identify structural defects. And that's quite a serious thing.
Yeah.
People are not going to have confidence in that. They certainly wouldn't now. So I think that's going to be the area of proper development, is how do we get people to trust? How do we validate the information quickly? And I suppose that's going to be another model itself, isn't it? It's going to be another AI system that analyses the information that's come from the initial assessment. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be processes like that will have to be introduced for people to start to trust the information. Yeah,
you've got a layer on top of the layer, basically, making sure the information is accurate. I think the sky is the limit at this point. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And I think even just the last 6 months has been this crazy curve with everything that's coming out of Anthropic and the certainty that you're able to get and the scale that these tools are able to be applied regardless of the industry you're in. It's a very unique moment. And a couple of years ago, I was much more skeptical of where things were sitting. And I think a lot of folks would agree with me there. And my perception is rapidly changing.
I think we're on the cusp of something quite spectacular. I think we're on the verge of something like, it's really going to change things, definitely.
You mentioned a moment ago, you're a bit of a techie, like very enthusiastic about technology. Is there any specific tech that you're really excited about outside of artificial intelligence? Like, what has you fired up?
One of the things that I'm really excited about being in tech is actually seeing the skill sets of people in tech adapt. Seeing the digital engineers, there's overlaps now with the IT. They're scripting, they're building their own tools, they're getting involved heavily with AI. That's just absolutely remarkable to see. And the same with the teams on site. I think just seeing those skill sets become more techie and more digital, it's really, really inspiring. And it's definitely getting there. I know we still think the industry is slow to adapt, which it is. It's slow to move, but it's a big old machine. It's got, there's a lot to it. But it is heading in the right direction without a shadow of a doubt. And it's just really inspiring to see when you get the new engineers on site and they're all over software and they're all over digital and they're all over, And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is to get to a point where you don't necessarily need people like us, or you need a lot less of us, because the teams are becoming so much more enabled. Yeah, and I think that's pretty fantastic to see.
I love that answer because it's such an exciting moment as far as how we're enabling and empowering people on site. Because I think for years, like the VDC team was largely the IT support for the entirety of the project, where they had the tools and the skills, they were deeper in the weeds with technology and supported the folks that were out in the field. And now we're seeing more and more people have access to these tools, but also a desire and an interest. But I think the skill set and the digital maturity that folks have now is also quite exciting. And so there's a real empowering moment for folks where we step back and go, okay, like we want to democratize access to this technology. We want to empower folks. There's a lot of training that needs to happen. And I think the companies that are really doing well today excel at this to make sure they understand how to use the tools and the technology alongside just the standard aspects of construction, whether you're pounding nails or pouring concrete. But it's a pretty exciting moment. And I think this is going to accelerate as folks just continue to be more technically savvy and we continue to empower them to learn and experiment.
Yeah, exactly that. And those that see the value, the way they adopt the software, the technology, and it spreads, it becomes infectious. When you've got a section engineer that's all over a piece of software, reviewing models and creating all these jazzy outputs, people want in on that and they want to see and they want to get involved. So it's really good. I don't think we should get down on ourselves. And then going back to that Formula One point, from where the tech has started and where we are now, it's not that significant amount of time when you think about it in Formula One, from fit in the 50s taking 60 odd seconds to change a wheel and now to two. So I think don't get down on the industry. It's we are doing well, we are getting there without a shadow of a doubt.
I would agree with you there. So I got one more question for you today. What is one tool you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
VS Code.
VS Code. Why?
VS Code.
Tell me more.
A lot of the time to look for workarounds. So I might, if I'm dealing with huge amounts of data that's semi-structured, I'll start writing scripts to structure that data, to look for patterns in it. If certain other tool, if you're using a piece of software where it doesn't quite deliver what I need, then I'll use it to call down the API, maybe develop something behind that so it does what I need. So I think VS Code,
I like it. It's a testament to your tech savviness and enthusiasm to be able to pull that out of your back pocket and go, this isn't doing what I want it to, and now I'm going to make it.
I need the right tool for the job. Yeah, exactly. So that's what VS Code does for me. It gives me the right tool for the job.
I like it. Well, Victoria, this has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you joining me on this episode.
Thank you very much. It's been fantastic.
For everybody out there listening, of course, you've likely figured out I'm Eric, your host of Digital Builder. If you're not watching the video version, I'm going to once again encourage you to head over to YouTube and check it out, just because we are in an absolutely beautiful space here in the lovely city of Amsterdam. If you want to reach out and have any questions for me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, of course, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Also, I'm going to make a humble plea today. If you like this episode and you enjoy the show, if you could go out and leave us a review, I'd be very appreciative. It does bump us up the charts and makes a big difference. And until the next time, goodbye.